Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Please sit. Eric Arthur Blair, born the 25th of June, 1903, and died the 21st of January, 1950, perhaps better known by his pen name, George Orwell. He was an English novelist, essayist, journalist, and critic. Born in India to wealthy parents, Orwell, let's call him by that name, was best known for his dystopian novel 1984, written in 1949, and the allegorical novella Animal Farm, written somewhere around 1945. 1984 is set in Airstrip 1, that we know as Great Britain, a province of the superstate, Oceania, in a world of perpetual war and omnipresent government surveillance. I don't know about you, but that gives me the willies. Published in England on the 17th of August, 1945, Animal Farm, A Fair Story, was shortened to Animal Farm in 1946. Apparently, the American publishers didn't think the general public could fully grasp any short story if the title was more than 2 words. The book reflects events leading up to the Russian Revolution of 1917 and then on into the Stalin era of the Soviet Union. It is from these 2 works that the term Orwellian has evolved, or devolved. It depends on your persuasion. But it's not these 2 works I'm going to draw upon. Rather, it's Orwell's 1946 essay, Some Thoughts on the Common Toad. Quite appropriate for this time of year, and in particular at this stage of our Lenten journey. A little bit of it goes like this. Before the swallow, before the daffodil. Yeah, he wasn't familiar with Wisconsin spring. And not much later than the snowdrop, the common toad salutes the coming of spring after his own fashion, which is to emerge from a hole in the ground where he has lain buried since the previous autumn, and crawl as rapidly as possible towards the nearest suitable patch of water. Some kind of shudder in the earth, or perhaps merely a rise of a few degrees of temperature, has told him that it's time to wake up. At this period, after his long fast, the toad has a very spiritual look, like a strict Anglo-Catholic in Lent. His movements are languid but purposeful. His body is shrunken, and by contrast, his eyes look abnormally large. Now, as one who leans towards the Anglo-Catholic persuasion, I can read this and laugh, not only in general because it's somewhat funny, but at myself because it is true. I can remember one Sunday in Lent when I was the seminarian at All Saints Cathedral in Milwaukee, and Dean Helpman entered the sacristy and he looked around and he said, "Good morning, gentlemen," as we were all indeed men. I know we're all trying to be good Anglo-Catholics here, but it wouldn't kill you to smile once in a while. Are we allowed to smile in Lent, I thought? After all, I was attending a seminary where it was Lent 364 days a year. Every day but Easter Sunday. Yes? Yes. So is Lent supposed to make us miserable? No. Lent is supposed to make us pensive, introspective, and to be more spiritually focused. Lent is a time when we get our spiritual house in order. It is a time when we prepare our hearts, minds, and souls for the coming Paschal feast. So the question that I have been asking throughout Lent is, what does this person, in particular today, Lazarus, have to do with Lent? As we move ever closer to the climax of this and every Lenten season, Holy Week, we start to get ready for those most sacred 3 days in the church calendar, the Triduum Sacrum, Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, and Holy Saturday. The story of Lazarus being brought back from the dead offers a foreshadowing of the Triduum, with its major emphasis on the themes of death and resurrection. The question is often asked, what is the difference between Jesus being raised from the dead and Lazarus emerging from the tomb? In the Jewish tradition, the soul and the body separate after 3 days. So after 4 days, Lazarus was, without question, dead. And every 3 years, on the 5th Sunday in Lent, I get to quote my favorite lines from a very old translation of Scripture. Lo, my Lord, he stinketh much. But Lazarus is not resurrected. He is resuscitated. There is a clear and distinct difference. Resuscitation is the bringing back to life of a person, as is often the case with today's modern medical techniques. A person revived by CPR or with the use of a defibrillator to shock the person back from heart failure after being dead for a very short time is a perfect example. Jesus died on the cross, yet he was not resuscitated. He was resurrected. He lives that we too might be resurrected and live life eternal in and through him. These themes are clearly evident, yet the deeper meaning of this gospel may be less easy to grasp. I ask, therefore, is there a correlation between the 4 days that Lazarus has been in the tomb, decaying, and the 4 10-day periods of our Lenten journey? Does our often neglected spirituality stinketh much? Possibly. But if our Lenten journey can be likened to Lazarus' time in the tomb, then it is Jesus who comes to the door and demands that we walk out under our own free will. The 5th week in Lent is not too late to realize that we will only have a finite number of opportunities to pilgrimage through these 40 days. Perhaps we can all look back on those Lenten seasons where we failed to make it to that place that we hoped we would. Or better still, we should focus on the ones where we did. Like Lazarus, our time spent in the tomb is nearly over, and Jesus is called. Next week, we begin what perhaps can be viewed as a historical reenactment. It all begins on Palm Sunday when we act out the Passion Gospel with various people speaking the major parts as characters that each played a part in the trial and execution of Jesus. We will then ride that emotional roller coaster that begins on Maundy Thursday, when this year we will again remember through anamnesis the first Holy Eucharist, the Last Supper. And while we will explore the main themes of the Christian community, those of koinonia and diaconia, mutual love through friendship and the service of others. After the Maundy Thursday, we will remember that Jesus goes out into the night to pray at the Garden of Gethsemane. You will be able to imagine yourself as one of the disciples praying in the garden as you meditate in silence in the chapel, should you choose to do so. Contemplate betrayal. Focus on God's love. If you let your emotions and imaginations run free, you will experience the trial of Jesus and the painful, unjust execution of an innocent man on Good Friday. Consider then sacrificial love. Holy Saturday, we will celebrate the climax of Lent with the great vigil of Easter and its themes of creation, salvation, and new life and renewal at our cathedral, where I have the honor of delivering the sermon. Well, at this moment. That wonderful service begins with the flames of new light and the first Eucharist of the new Easter. Easter Sunday is always the greatest celebration of our faith in the entire year. But first, come and experience Holy Week. I, for one, am really excited this year, and I extend this invitation to you now. Lazarus, come out.